Welcome, I'm your host, Malcolm Gallagher. From our BizVision Studios in the UK, you're watching the BVTV network. For over 20 years here at BizVision, we've been consistent in communication of the need for transparency and integrity within business, especially regarding procurement and purchasing. I've got to say, it's been a hard struggle over those years, as many businesses had negative thoughts about how procurement went about its dark dealings. I think gradually we're seeing change happen, and some sectors faster than others. Construction has had some, let's just say, nefarious and likely illegal practices in the past around the world. My guest today was a chartered surveyor for 30 years, and during that time, he discovered a very sophisticated procurement fraud in UK construction. What was it that he found, and could it still exist today? So let's go talk to Karl de Leeuw. Welcome, Karl.
Hello, Malcolm. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. And you're right in the center of the world at the moment, isn't it? Greenwich.
Yes, for those internationally, Greenwich is in southeast London, United Kingdom.
Yeah, and soon, the world revolves around GMT, doesn't it? That's the exciting thing.
Oh, yes. I've never thought about it that way. Yes, GMT. But I must say the biggest thing, we're starting to come out of the third lockdown here in the UK. The most important thing for me, I must say, is for the barbers to open. I think it's 17th or 18th of April, I think.
Yeah, I've got to tell you, my wife is cutting my hair later today. Right. So, calm me down, please. Calm me down in the interview. Yeah. I'm delighted, Karl, that you're guesting on our BBTV network. Now, listeners and viewers, in this BBTV show, I'll be talking to Karl in three parts. First, I'll ask him to tell us about the design and build tendering fraud he found. What was it and how big was it? And in part two, we'll move to talking about spotting and stopping such fraud. Who should be doing it and how? And in part three, I'll ask him about his mentioning that he believes the quantity surveying profession is in serious risk of becoming extinct. I'll ask him to explain that and his way of fixing it. But Karl, before we get into our three-part talk, can you please briefly introduce yourself to my viewers and listeners? Who is Karl de Leeuw and what's your passion?
My passion is to make the world a better place. So I come from Pretoria, South Africa, the art of apartheid. I studied at the University of Pretoria to be a quantity surveyor. I always looked at the teachers at school. It was all white school, and I never saw them making money, but I've always wanted to be a teacher and speak about things. I looked at my dad. My dad built up one of the sort of 2 or 3 biggest quantity surveying practices in South Africa, the CP de Leeuw group. He was Dr. CP Corneille de Leeuw. And I went into quantity surveying. So I've got a quantity surveying degree from the University of Pretoria. At age 25, which is sort of 32 years ago, I came to the UK. We started a practice sort of mid-90s, the de Leeuw job. That was separate to South Africa. And then our 2 biggest clients, one came through South Africa, was the Rothmans. Yeah. So my biggest job I did was quite exciting. Mid-90s was St. Petersburg, Russia, the Rothmans factory. Mm-hmm. I had 2 very senior guys running that, but I was fortunate of that. And then we built a Milton Keynes research center for them. But unfortunately, Rothmans overnight disappeared because they merged with BAT. And then our other big client, as more Tim's side, is the War Brothers. It's the Harley Davidson showrooms in Kings Road. And but then I went into property, made a lot of money, went to Dublin, got caught in the Celtic Tiger, and I lost everything.
Wow! Oh,
and
dear.
Yeah,
how did you feel that with that sudden loss?
Yeah, well, it woke me up. And what that then meant is, because I couldn't invest anymore, I came back into quantity surveying, and I then wrote 3 books. I researched, so there's Lexia Code book, the Housepring Code book, and the Universe Code book. That took me 7 days, all published, and it's on my website, lightsurface.me. In between, I did an MSc at South Bank University in London in property development, stroke project management. And it is really when I returned back into quantity surveying, 2012, 2013, that I started discovering sophisticated fraud.
Which we'll talk about in our interview. Yeah. Can I just ask before we go on a bit further? Does QS, quantity surveying, does it translate across the world? Is it the same in America, or what's it called in other parts of the world?
It's still called a quantity surveyor, but it's not so prevalent. So yes, for any listeners that's not from a Commonwealth country, so quantity surveying is very much a Commonwealth profession.
Right.
But there are quantity surveyors in places like Spain and Portugal and America now, but very few in America. But the big firms, big UK firms are there. But for everyone, the best way to explain it for a non-Commonwealth country person is we are accountants in the building industry, but it's far more than that. You know, it's a profession. We study for 4 years at a university. We taught law, all kind of things. And we look after the client's money from inception, you know, from when the architect comes with the plans for a massive hotel to work out what's the estimate of that, from the tendering process, and then afterwards doing monthly certificates and doing the final account.
Yeah. Can I just slip in an extra little personal question there, please, Karl? Dyslexia. You're in a very intense business with words and numbers and so on. Did you find that your dyslexia held you back, or how did you overcome that challenge?
It held me back quite a lot as far as doing bill of quantities are concerned. So University of Victoria in South Africa are big in quantities. So there you study for 5 years, 2 years full-time and 3 years part-time. You worked and they were really particular on quantities. So not only did I pick a profession that you had to be spot on what you wrote, but you know, and quantities. I've never been. I had to resit after I did my matric, which is the school. I went to the Navy for 2 years. You had to do national service in those days, and in South Africa. And during that 2 years, I had to reset my maths in order to get into university. So not only was I not good at writing, but maths is not, you know, maths is not an issue for me because it's spreadsheets and stuff like that. But maths wasn't my top topic. So I really picked something where my skill sets wasn't really wasn't there, but because I'm good at managing, and I was far more on that side of the thing, managing, you know, getting the work on the management side and delegating to people, and that was my that skill I had.
Yeah, I understand now. Brilliant. Now, Karl, let's start our talk in part one. Tell us about the design and build tendering fraud you found. What is it, or was it, and how big was it?
It was massive. This is all my view. Listeners can obviously take their time. So when I came out of post losing everything, I first worked for so I worked on a contract basis. Although I work permanent for firms, I worked for sort of on a project, and then I'll take a 6 months break for my research.
Yeah.
And then work on a project. So when I was at De Leeuw Jupp, so you've got 3 procurement methods in the UK: traditional, management, and design and build. So at De Leeuw Jupp, at that point in the UK, up to when I sort of left 2002, it was 90%. I just quote percentages, not exact, but traditional. So everything was measured. So a designer comes with a design. You do a bill of quantities. You measure everything. You know, one brick, brick wall, so many meters squared. Blah blah blah. when I just so intersect management, I'm not a great fan of, because a lot of clients wants to get on site quickly, and then they go the management route. It's got no cost certainty, and actually you find out things later on that would change the whole building. So I'm not a fan at all of management.
Yeah.
So when I returned, 2012, 2013 onwards, I discovered that things in that period, only in the UK, I know Ireland and I know South Africa is still very traditional, still more bill of quantities, but it's obviously changing. But in the UK, during that period, 10 years I was out, moved 90% designer build.
Mm-hmm.
So I then, in the following years, worked for two very large top 5 quantity surveying practices in the UK. So the first practice, I won't mention any names, I started in 2014, and I worked on a £250 million project, so it's massive. And this was only one of 7 stages in London, residential. So I'm brought in to be the senior quantity surveyor. So I have someone above me, someone below me, but I've got to sign things off as a senior quantity surveyor. So it's my responsibility. So I was on stage 2. There was a stage 1, and a lot of the prices for stage 1 was just finished being negotiated. So I could use that for, and we were at estimate stage, pre-contract. And what they were using is and this is where I'm coming to the crux of the matter now, is a procurement method called design and build. Okay, everyone knows that.
Yeah.
But it's single stage design and build. So how that works is they pick, say, 5 main contractors, in this case, tier 1, sort of top contractors in the UK. And they say to them, for this project, give us your preliminaries. For those that don't know what that is, it's on-site establishment, site huts, staff, cranes, all that things. Price that for this project in a detailed document, and then give us your overheads and profits. There's also percentage for risk, percentage of risk, and then overheads and profits. Then, what they then do is, from those 5 tenders, they pick one main contractor. That's their partner, pre-contract.
Right.
So this is before they get on site. Then the main contractor that's now picked take the different packages. So any project has got about 21 packages: frame, foundations, painting, sealing, all these packages. The main contractor then tenders those packages to their subcontractors. That they choose, because it's got to be their subcontractors, because they're taking on the design responsibility. Now that's where the problem comes, because if you an honest contractor can go to tender with the 5 subcontractors per 21 packages and come up with a very competitive prices. But the not so honest contractor can come up with inflated prices. So what I found on that first project I worked on was that the concrete work, steel work, sort of the mass items, the prices came in exactly as they should do. But I just want to mention for anyone outside the UK and so outside construction is, in the UK you get 3 or more books. That's pricing books: Spons, Wessex, Laxton's, and I mainly use Spons. And these books are published and they give the prices of everything. And it's from historical data. They go to quantity surveying firms, they say, give us your prices for last year, and they build it up. And you've got indices to change the prices between London and, say, Northamptonshire, and places like that. So it's very sophisticated. So you can actually, you always know as a quantity surveyor from those pricing books and from previous tenders that's come in, you always know within a few percent of what the price should be.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sitting here at this massive quantity surveying practice in London, and I'm just going to mention 3 prices. Timber veneer. So there's timber veneer in these hallways, and there's lots of hallways. This is £250 million jobs. The timber veneer should cost about £125 per meter squared, fully installed. It comes in at 412 from the contract on phase 1 that's just been let.
Yeah.
So now I'm going for quotations, and it's coming 125. So now the team from phase 1 says to me, no, those contractors cannot do the job. And I say to them, rubbish. Absolutely. They say they're not big enough. They're not, because I know that this is just cooked. This whole thing is just cooked. And so now we've got paperwork within the quantity surveying going around. So they pick particular things. So a door. Okay, so there's many apartments. It's a residential. So a hardwood door, good quality ironmongery, fully installed, should cost £1,000.
Right.
Comes in at 3,900.
Oh.
And that is before overheads and profits. All these prices are before overheads and profits.
Yeah.
So it is just completely wacky. Cladding. The cladding price from phase 1 comes in, same specification. I go to subcontractors, should be £600 for that particular double glazed cladding. And it comes in double that, 1,200 meters squared. So when all of these things happened, I went to the MD. I just emailed the MD that was in London. Well, the MD of the London side. And I said, I would like to meet up. Took me a month to get a meeting. Then he said, I told him what's happening. Then he said, well, they're going to appoint a committee. There's a law in the UK now that you have to go down this. So they appoint the lawyer for this practice, plus another experienced quantity surveyor, and they go through the whole thing. I meet up with them, and they said there's nothing wrong. So I say to him, just these prices. I say, how can you say there's nothing wrong? Now, in this practice, I didn't see one sponsor or Wessex or anything, not one pricing book.
Right.
And this is a top 5 quantity surveying practice. So then I went, so this was about September. I resigned. They said to me, if you stay until December, you can get a 10%, you're going to miss your 10%
bonus. Yeah.
And it's all, the whole thing is really fishy. So then what I did is I went to the client representative. I've obviously already went to it. And at this stage, I already felt that the client was unhappy with them. And I then went to the ROCS. And I'll come back to ROCS on our second part question. I left. I then heard, like a year or two later, that that practice got sacked. They lost all their future. There were 7 massive. Another quantity surveying was put in charge. And interesting enough, so I estimated overall that the client was overpaying by 20%. So you can take 20% on $250,000 is massive.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I saw in the news, in a newspaper, that the project was let for exactly 20% less. That's that second phase I was working on. So I believe that that was corrected. Then from there, I took a break again. And then I went to a project. I can't talk too much because it's a MOD. So
No. And we've got to be careful. Yes. Yes,
it's a Ministry of Defence. So I signed a secrecy document. So all I want to say is it's in the UK. It's American taxpayer money. And I went there pre-contract again. There's 9 buildings. I worked on 3. And carbon copy. At this stage, it was worse. It was 30%. And I told them how to fix it. There was a contractor on site, but we had no contract signed. I said, make them one of the contractors. We get 3 other competitor contractors in, and we fix this. And I went to the client, nothing happened. I went to the main quantity surveyor. There was many quantity surveyors floating around there. Main quantity surveyor and the project manager, we had a meeting. I said, I can't sign this off. This was 30% at that stage. I said, it's going to get worse because things only get worse normally. And nothing wants to get fixed. And so, you know, suddenly I was out of a job. And so it's all because of this single stage design and build. There's nothing wrong with 2-stage design and build. And on question 3, I'll suggest a method of how to tackle that one.
Okay. Karl, just before we move to part 2, I'd just like to remind viewers and listeners of your website URL, which is on the screen behind me, viewers. Let me read it out for listeners. It's all the W's, light, L-I-G-H-T, lightsurfers.me. And there you'll find details of Karl's books and your real passion in whistleblowing. Right, it's time for part 2, Karl. Let's talk about spotting and stopping such fraud. Now, who should be doing that and how? Is it something that fraud can be replicated, or can the stopping be replicated or used in another, that same fraud used in another format, for example?
Yes. So, you know, I don't know how the fraud happens, but all I know for sure, it's like an IKEA desk. If you know it costs £100 and suddenly it's £130, then you know it's wrong. And somehow down the line, if the client doesn't want to fix it, there's something horribly wrong, because why should a client, any client, pay 30% more? Now, I once asked a particular quantity practice, what percentage of large-scale projects do they use single-stage tendering in the UK? And he said 20%. So I don't know what percentage, but single-stage tendering should be completely stopped. And I'm going to discuss who I think should do that. I just want to read from the email at that first project I worked with in London, what the head architect of that phase said to me when he heard I was resigned. So I emailed him to say I'm resigning, and within 5 minutes he emailed me back, sort of on the spur of the moment email. And with this email he said the following, and it starts answering your question. You are honest and hardworking, which are 2 qualities not easily to find in people nowadays. Now, if that's not damning of the UK construction industry, I don't know what is, because everyone knew what the hell was going on. Sorry to use that word. Sorry, I shouldn't have mentioned. But no one was doing anything. So, on answer your question, the people that should stamp it out are the people, the quantity surveyors that study for 4 years, that their job is to look after the client's finances. Yeah. And they know exactly what's happening on, but what they're doing, they're more interested that their 2 kids are in private schools than anything else. That's what they say to me. They look after they've got to look after it. So that's the first. People within the industry, especially quantity surveyors, that is there being for that purpose. Secondly, it's the RICS. So the RICS for overseas is the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, and they're a professional body that's supposed to, in my view, stamp out these things. So I went to the RICS in both instances, and in both instances, they sent me email back, and I'm just going to read this. After assessment of the information you provided, what I've just discussed, we have determined that the threshold for an investigation with the RICS has not been met. The concerns do not relate to a breach of RICS rules of conduct, and the matter is regarding how construction industries operate in general, not specifically concerns about the RICS member or firm. It's not within our remit to investigate concerns regarding the sector as a whole. So my point to the RICS was, you have to ban single stage tendering because you're inviting fraud. And if the RSAs haven't got powers, they need to get those powers. That's the body that is supposed to do this. They're the one that recommend procurement routes. I went to the Building magazine, which is for overseas listeners, is a big magazine in the UK. I got two of the Building magazine direct emails of two of the reporters. They never came back to me. Okay, it might have gone to their trash box. I went to the police, to fraud, both cases. You fill in a form. I never heard back. I went to the CMA, which is the Competition and Markets Authority.
Yeah.
A lot of correspondence. I sent them all the detailed documents. This is the end of it. Dear Mr. de Leeuw, noting your responses, I referred this matter to top senior staff at the CMA. The conclusion they arrived is that this matter will not progress at this stage due to lack of cartel evidence. This is a fraud, and the CMA do not deal with fraud. That is a police matter. And the special fraud reporting system has been devised with which you can access via the following link. So as I mentioned, I already did that before. So this whole thing is just falling right through the cracks.
And you believe it's still happening today?
100%.
100%.
Why shouldn't this is the first scheme I started 2014 up to 2015. The second scheme was end of 2019 into 2020, and it was bigger than the first one.
Yeah.
And so and then I went for interviews after that, and this is when I asked the guy what percentage would they think is single stage. So single stage is, my guesstimate, 20% of the large scale projects in the UK. I just want to mention something to you just by and by. In November, December 2019, I went to the top 50 developers. I wrote to them, tried to get email addresses, always to the top guys. So maybe I only got through to 10, but I would guess I would have got through to about 20%, half maybe. And what I proposed them, all single stage tendering projects, I would, whatever saving, I would re-tender it for them. And whatever saving I can make, I want 10%, and I'll work for free. Not one came back to me. Not one. And, it's single stage is used in the construction industry, and it is sophisticated fraud. I don't know how the money passes, but if something costs either 20 or 30% more, there has to be something wrong.
Karl, we better move on to part 3, because you mentioned that you believe the quantity surveying profession is in serious risk of becoming extinct. Can you explain that and what's your way of fixing it?
Yes, so in the UK, it's mostly now design and build, which is, I think, the right way. But we've got to go, there's a good design and build method, multi-stage, multiple procurement, which I'm going to discuss now. But what's happening is quantity surveying, clients are going to the contractors nearly first. And the quantity surveying is now starting to work for the contractor. And that is the whole reason why a UK person set up quantity surveying, is that it's a profession and they should be sort of separated.
Right.
So how I see a designer build is the best procurement route, because it gives the client cost certainty. I discovered something on the last project after 30 years of being quantity surveying. I said, wow, this is the eureka moment. So you've got these 21 packages. What I would suggest to anyone in procurement in the construction, and specifically quantity surveyors, is that you get your design team to work on those to work on the design of it. Then at a particular, quite as early as you can, you go with the 5 main packages. So the 5 main packages is normally the frame, whether it's concrete or steel. It's the cladding, which is the outside and the roof. It's the partitioning and ceilings, and it's mechanical and electrical. And, but you work out what are the top 5 packages. So you don't go for all 21.
No.
You tender, because we know as quantity surveying what the prices are. So you tender those using an estimate to those 5 main. You go to, say, 3 or 5. You must probably only need to go to 3 subcontractors. And then they win the contract informally. So they're not appointed yet, because you're going to get a main contractor down the line. But these are all subcontractors that can work with the top tier 1 or 2 main contractors. So there's detail that needs to be ironed out. But the reason why, then you get the subcontractors to sit with the designers and finish the design. Because what I've discovered is that's one of the most important things to do. What happens is the designers speak to the contractors. The designers need to speak to the subcontractors. They're the one with the answers. If you go to a main contractor, you get a baffled answer because they look at commerciality. If you go to a subcontractor rep, they have the answers. So on those 5 packages, you get the subcontractors to be part of the design team, and then you'll get real design taking place. So that is my suggestion. I just want to say, because I'm big on the climate, that I won't go for timber. We don't need to cut down trees in construction. I won't go for steel. You might need some steel sometime to span certain areas. I will go for green concrete. I've got a talk on lightsurface.me on practical steps in climate. So this is one of my passions. So green concrete is concrete that's manufactured in plants that they are zero CO2 free. And reinforcements, you can now have volcanic reinforcement. So go down that route. Then I've got this teacup that I use when I go out. So cork is the only product that every 7 years, a cork tree, they remove the bark. And then the CO2 absorption increases by between 5 to 7 times of the cork tree. So that's the only thing you can use for finishes. But the reason why I show this is PLA plastic, which is very hard, and which is made from sugarcane or it's products like that. And so the reason for mentioning this is quantity surveyors and others in professions should start having far more a climate hat on and look at local materials. And the reason why I mentioned PLA, perhaps UPVC windows should be replaced by PLA. I don't know if that's possible, because this is very hard. And we should stop any product that's made from a petroleum product. I just want to see if I've missed it. Yes, I would also say to the QS profession, go for a simplified SSM7, SM8 or whatever. It's a measurement method. So instead of having very detailed measurements, go for a super estimate style quantities. We don't need to have it so exact. And just one point, when I was working on these projects, certainly the first one, you get a tender in that just got 5 headings and no breakdown. So when you're in post-contract and you want to change things, you've got no prices for variations. So everything is made to confuse. And the last thing I just want to say to the UK government, go for geothermal. So this is where you drill into the earth. Do local areas like Greenwich, drill 5 meters deep. The UK government is now considering going air heat source pumps, but they need to look after a 50-year lifespan. Geothermal will give a far better return. You know, Iceland, 90% of Iceland, okay, they've got a lot of heat underneath them. The heating is done by geothermal. And then obviously we're already going solar, But on the solar, to top it up, so what you need to do is bring 30 degrees water via geothermal into houses, and that can be for new houses or refurbishment for the underfloor heating. If you obviously need it for hot water for other reasons, you can then top it up with green energy from a utility company. And for the radiators that need 60 degrees, you also top it up. The UK government is now considering air heat source pumps or hydrogen boilers to replace the gas.
Yeah.
Green hydrogen is about 3 times more expensive than gas, so that's the other problem. But like gas, it's got a NOx. So NOx is nitrogen oxide. That's bad for your lungs. So it's obviously under certain levels. But why bring in a dangerous gas into your home? So for warmer countries, people in the building industry, I'm suggesting go like they've done in Morocco. They built a plant that's the size of Paris that has got 25% of Morocco's energy giving it, and they've now perfected storage. So what they do is they take salt, molten salts, they push it through the solar panels in a liquid. The solar panels heat the salts up to 500 degrees Celsius. That then goes into storage tanks, and at nighttime, via steam release, it then gives electricity at nighttime. So they've perfected it. So in the warm countries, we need to go solar with molten storage, molten salt storage. In countries like the UK, a combination of geothermal coming into the homes and solar coming from solar plants, because solar plants can push these molten salts through the system, which a home can't. And it's not good for a home to use batteries because we're going to need it for the electric cars.
Yeah, fascinating, Karl. The world of procurement, especially public procurement, has had a major integrity rinse in the past 20 years, but perhaps that hasn't happened as thorough in the supply chain. So seller beware. My guest today, Karl de Leeuw, has hopefully opened quite a few eyes. Many thanks, Karl, for a fascinating interview.
Thank you, Malcolm, for having me. And all I would say is that my biggest passion now is world peace, and this is part of it because we need the truth. The truth will set us free.